All right, good evening, everyone. This very last section, I know you can't wait to leave here, but my joy is that we've had a very interactive day. So I'm hoping to keep it like that to the last minute. So I would like to introduce to you Radhika Shah. She's coming from Silicon Valley perspective. And her goal would be to actually work with me and talk to you about two sides of technology. And we're going to be sharing with you some stories from around the globe. Radhika is an angel and impact investor from the tech industry. She's a veteran from that industry and a co-president of Stanford Angel and Entrepreneur that has about over 1,000 members from Stanford Club. Just her bio is on page 77 of your briefing book. However, I wanted to highlight that she's also a co-founder of the mentoring group for rajivcircle.org and a speaker and panelist at many other programs. She's also an Sustainable Development Goal Philanthropy Platform advisor, which is a group that works with the UN in advising on the SDG. And she'll talk a little bit about that in her presentation. So without wasting much time, myself, I'm a nursing faculty from Rutgers University, and I'm representing Jonas Jonas Foundation Nursing Center as a member of the this committee. So without much waste of time, I just want to let you know we will break it in two sections. She will frame the discussion a little bit in her presentation. We will stop and then take some questions from the tables and give you time to huddle, and then give us some questions, and then we'll go to the second part. Hopefully we'll have time to entertain more questions. Okay, so go ahead, Radhika, you're on.
Thank you, Emilia. I'm really excited to be here and have an interactive dialogue, share some perspectives. And so I am Emilia already. Thank you for your generous introductions. What I try to do here in my world is connect the world of tech in Silicon Valley and deeply engage and bring some of the power of tech innovation to help achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals and bring positive social change in the world and connect us all as a global community. And try and do this via the Sustainable Development Goals Philanthropy Platform, where I'm an advisor, which is a global platform and a catalytic platform to bring philanthropy together to work with UN and governments and connect the Silicon Valley ecosystem with that world. I grew up in the world of the Gandhi ashram. So to me, human dignity as well as thinking of nature as a resource, not for us to leverage, but for us as custodians and trustees of nature is something that is almost a religion to me. And so this is a moment in time where technology can play a key role in achieving these goals. And with that, can you see your screen?
Yes.
The screen clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the focus of my talk today will be on the potential of tech to offer nonlinear and highly scalable solutions to some of the biggest challenges of our times, such as poverty, inequality, public health, gender equality, and a lot more. And we'll also look at how can tech play a very key role in the dignity of all and achieving the UN SDGs, as well as touch on the ethics of technology. And so some initial quick context. Most of you probably know about the goals, but I wanted to just touch on them. In 2015, several world leaders, pretty much all member states at the UN and the UN came together and ratified the most ambitious set of goals ever, the 17 goals being called the global goals or the sustainable development goals. These goals weave together social, economic, environmental challenges, the biggest challenges of our times: poverty, hunger, tackling inequality, tackling climate justice, and social justice, conserving land and underwater animals, pretty much all the social causes of our times, and bringing together the global community to do this, as well as underlying is the philosophy that we are all doing this together, breaking the mindset of global north, going and helping global south. All of us are in this together as peers and the climate justice concept that solutions are integrated, they're not disconnected. Climate change is not separate from human development. So it's a very exciting moment that now we have for the first time a global normative framework that pretty much all world leaders have agreed to. And it's a taxonomy for all of us to come together and work collectively. So from the technology perspective, we are also at a very interesting inflection point. There is tremendous potential for cross-sector collaboration and integrative solutions. Tech is becoming the new electricity and, in a sense, the oil of the world, and getting very ubiquitous, though not everywhere. It is already there. Internet infrastructure and mobile phones are there in places like even some of the remote refugee camps, as well as many of the very remote parts of the world, and rapidly penetrating faster there. Then impact investors and many others are funding tech innovations to achieve social change, including the Sustainable Development Goals. All of these things put us at a very interesting inflection point. And the questions many of us are asking, that is technology one of the big accelerants and levers to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? And is AI and the future of technology going to be a game changer here? In order to do this, people are looking at innovation, different kinds of design, some of tech policy, and an intentionality of tech, which we'll talk more about later, that if you're not intentional, can we do more harm than help? Tech innovations offer some of the biggest solutions already to many of the problems in our field. Just touching on a couple of examples, self-driving cars can be game changers for the elderly in places like, especially United States, where public transportation in many places is almost non-existent. There are solutions that automate weeding, helping farmers focus on the less labor-intensive tasks. On the healthcare front, radiology is leapfrogging, especially AI is helping leapfrog and do things even beyond what surgeons can do. It's a pro and a con, but in terms of saving lives, it's a major development. And then in education, organizations like Coursera, they bring the best computer science education to people all over the world. It's free, it's online. So now there are people in small villages in India and Africa who have internet access, who are as good at computer science as the top students from MIT and Stanford, thanks to Coursera. It's been a game changer. Similarly, there is other things happening, like in job mobility, where markets are being disrupted, business models are being disrupted because of technology. Summersource is one such example, which is bringing digital micro work from places like Stanford, Google, to women and other vulnerable communities in sub-Saharan Africa. And now women who earlier in some places of the world who couldn't leave their homes can sit at their homes and do this micro work. They're easily trained for that, and they start earning more than other family members. And it's changing the status in the family, because suddenly from being non-earners, they're the highest earners now. And they're able to do this over the internet. So there's several market disrupting models. And then there is the power of data. In natural disaster relief, credit card networks, sometimes when other networks are down, just by looking at usages of where credit cards are used, one can infer which gas stations are still open, which stores are open when there's flooding or fires and such. This is another game changer, as well as in tackling inequality. Gender, race, there are organizations such as the Board List, which is bringing knowledge about getting more women board members, and on the boards of all the way from small to the largest public companies, and providing access to information about who are candidates using technology. Blendor is another one, which is looking at providing kind of guidance and policies around diversity to some of the biggest corporations, and doing this with technology. There are solutions to help victims of trafficking, game changer solutions for refugees, both developed by refugees and by others, which in the second part of the talk we will focus on a little bit. And then above all, tech really enables knowledge sharing, transparency, and anticipating and locating major trends. Women are now using this for sharing bias-related experiences, as we are seeing, because of social media, and is empowering other women to share this. This is a social movement right now on fire in Silicon Valley, that so many women are coming out with mistreatment and talking about it, and they're encouraged by hearing other women talk about it. So there's a lot of positive things, and yet this is a two-sided coin. There are some unintended side effects of technology and potentially intended, which are extremely harmful. And if we are not careful on thinking about this, there could be more harm done than good. And so touching on some of those, one is the anonymity that the internet offers, and the ability to amplify things through social media, along with the anonymity, is causing some very, very dangerous trends. Animal poaching has gone through the roof. It's increased orders of magnitude, because now one of the biggest challenges was transacting, and now people can anonymously transact on social media, and so that barrier is gone. Similarly with trafficking, human trafficking. And then there is disinformation spreading via social media, which leads to great xenophobia. In fact, some of the biggest refugee crises, the Rohingya and other ones, my understanding is that a lot of people just receive news through social media, and negative messages against ethnic minorities are amplified, and this leads to a lot of the refugee situations. And this is just a start. If we don't think about this, things could get even much worse. So on the other side, is technology an equalizer, or can it actually increase the digital divide? Will the elite who have more access to the best iPhones and the fastest internet, will it empower them more? And while in some parts of the world there is no internet access or very basic phones, so intentionality and thinking of inclusivity, thinking of how can we include everyone in this technology revolution is going to be critical, as well as how do we include communities from around the world in tech design, not just the elite in Silicon Valley or in other parts of the world. And then policy is going to be critical. Technology is leapfrogging policy, and that's having some very unintended or at times intended negative side effects. One example is the fake news that has been shaking the foundations of democracy in many parts of the world. In fact, some people are actually asking that will the internet actually destroy democracy? And that's a drastic statement. But we live in a world of fake news, robots and trolls, robots, paid trolls, news source distortion. There are often information bit spread where actually there's a fake logo of a very credible news organization that never generated that news. The authenticity of the user is at kind of stake. Sometimes they claim to be someone else. So it is a very difficult world we live in. And if we don't solve these problems, we face very, very major challenges as a world. There is also the impact on jobs, the two sides of like the radiology example. If AI and technology is kind of taking over a lot of the jobs, if you don't think through this, there will be major employment issues that are already starting to happen in Middle America. And on the other hand, there is two sides as well. As we discussed, mobile cell phones are bringing amazing change. For example, in Ghana, now in mobile cell phone towers, there is refrigeration facilities where vaccines are kept, and is transforming the ability to bring immunization to rural parts of Ghana. Coming back to the negatives, privacy, I won't get into the details. Privacy is at risk. Every one of our privacy, internet and identity theft is huge, and there are no easy solutions. There is human rights workers and journalists who are being killed for what they post on social media, as well as people are finding human rights workers, regimes, by just triangulating information on Facebook and by seeing where they are, identifying them. So there are several negatives to think of as well. And then I wanted to touch briefly on the ethics of technology. This, in addition to the pros and cons and the things that are happening, I think we are at a moment in time where it's very important to think about what are the ethics of this very powerful lever that is leapfrogging and becoming the new oil and electricity. And if we don't pause and think about it, I think we have very complex challenges ahead. There are the issues of who takes responsibility and accountability for these unintended, at times intended side effects. Should it be only governments? Is there a role for the technology creator companies? Is there a role for academia to research and look ahead? Is there a role for us consumers of this technology to think about which technology we use and how we use it? These are questions that need deep deliberation. who informs global and national tech policy? Should there be other stakeholders who understand technology better, who should be leading or deeply collaborating? Some of this is already starting to happen. There is a deep tension between freedom of expression and manipulation of social media to amplify negative propaganda. And there is a very negative, vicious circle going on here that if there is a curbing of freedom of expression, that leads to very bad side effects where regimes can really shut down freedom of expression and curb civil rights. And yet, on the other side of the spectrum, extreme freedom of expression is leading to hate and xenophobia being amplified. So it's a very, very difficult question. And what do we do here? The other issues, tech has a very powerful lever and tool. It's more a means to an end. Many of us from the tech world start thinking of it as an end in itself, and that's something to be examined and thought of from the ethical lens. And can technology help leapfrog major challenges? Will depend on how we look at the ethics of technology. And if we don't pause, it can shake the basic tenets of our democratic values. And this is something I think, and we can't do it individually. As a global community, we'll have to come together to do this. And do we need more education? Do we need ethics education in universities? Do we need technology ethics education classes in business schools? I know many of the universities are starting to think about this. Do we need centers focused on just digital tech policy? Stanford has just launched one at the Freeman Spogli Institute. And they're looking at some of these issues very deeply, bringing in global leaders. And then there are issues such as genetic engineering. We're all familiar with genetics as a way of solving the biggest medical problems of our times, and we have leapfrogged. And yet, I just heard that now for the first time, there was genetic modification for kind of tweaking the moral values in the mind of a human being in order to deal. This might be something that can help us evolve towards being human beings who connect more and care about each other, but it is a very dangerous path as well, potentially. It can also be a tool in the hands of people who want to spread xenophobia if we start playing with how we think and what values we have. And so this is another one where we have to think of the ethical implications very, very deeply. And with that, I just wanted to kind of wrap up this first part by saying that coming back to my role model, Mahatma Gandhi, whose values the Sustainable Development Goals very, very deeply embody, I would bring that same thinking that he had towards nature to technology. I would say it is a moment to think of ourselves as custodians of technology and its side effects, its proper ethical usage. Not think of it as a tool for us to leverage for our individual benefit, but think of it as a global resource, as like a public commons that we need to think of for all of our common good. And I want to just wrap up this session with a quote that I really liked from the Copenhagen letter. There was 100 plus participants came together at the Copenhagen Festival, tech producers, designers, philosophers, and they said, let's move from human-centered design to humanity-centered design. And this was in the context of technology. So with that, I'd like to pause and hand over back to Emilia for getting some of your reactions, questions, and a little bit of introduction.
So thank you so much. So we would like to have all the people sitting at each table do what you have done in the previous sections, just huddle, discuss, what does this bring to mind? One of the things that this actually brought to mind is a work that this forum actually did about 2 years ago, produced this report on empowering women and strengthening health systems and services through investing in nursing and midwifery enterprise. So this led in many of the African countries where the women began to own their own midwifery businesses. And of course, when they began to make money, the men took over the business because now they became the breadwinners of the family. So with that in mind, think about what she has said, the ethics, what the unintended consequences. As we're teaching our students, is good to actually call to their mindset some of the consequences that we need to be careful as we move forward with technology. So I'll give you 5 minutes to talk, and then we'll give us one question from each table.